Okay, our timer has wound down. I'm going to stop the timer from flashing at you, and we are back. Before the break, we used Ortho Mode to create the window that we see on the PowerPoint. Ortho Mode sort of forces us to draw at right angles or forces us to draw right orthogonally. We used the line command to draw that window. We used absolute Cartesian coordinate. We used direct distance entry, started the line command, and then typed in 0, 0, pointed up the screen, went 2.5, enter, pointed right, 36, enter, pointed down the screen, typed 5 and hit enter, left on the screen, 36, enter, up the screen, 2.5, enter, and then right one last time. And Ortho just kept us nice, straight horizontal, straight vertical lines. Hey, Terrence. And hit escape. We hit escape to cancel or end that command. And again, AutoCAD recognizes escape as cancel. Then before the break, we talked about Object Snap, how Object Snap is a tool that's on by default in your AutoCAD, and it has running object snaps of endpoint, center, intersection, and extension. I asked you to turn off intersection and extension, turn on midpoint, and again, you'll at some point define or develop your own preferences. You won't always want the ones that I have on, and depending on what you're working with, they might not be appropriate anyways. So we'll use Object Snap to help us create the window, the door drawing that we're about to use. We'll use the line command, absolute Cartesian coordinate 0, 0, direct distance entry, and polar tracking to create the door shape that's on page 24. So I'm going to click on the little graphic on the page here. This I would love to see more information. There's not a ton of information here, but I'll copy it and I'll paste it into the new drawing I'm about to start. So in AutoCAD, I'm just confirming that I've saved my window drawing, and there we go, I've saved it. So now I'm going to create a new drawing, and you can too. We'll go start by clicking New on the Quick Access toolbar, New. Again, this brings up the, oops, that's open. Sorry about that. Cancel, don't want that. Sorry. Even 25 years into AutoCAD, I can push the wrong button now and then. The first button is New. I'll click New. And again, I'm going to use the Start from Scratch option, Imperial feet and inches, and I'll hit OK. And again, following my routine, I'll turn on the grid, and then I'll change my limits. So this window, this door is 30 at its widest, 30 inches. So I'm going to change my limits. I'll left click the command line, type the word limits, L-I-M-I-T-S, limits, hit enter. I'm going to hit enter to accept 0, 0 as the lower left corner, enter, and then I'll type in 30, 30, just reusing the longest or the widest aspect of this drawing twice, 30, 30. I'll hit enter, and then I'll double click the mouse wheel to zoom out as far as I can. You can see the grid that I turned on looks a certain way right now. When I double click my mouse wheel, the grid looks different. It's denser. There's more squares per inch or something like that. So I've zoomed out. I'm at least 30. My screen is now equal to at least 30 in the vertical, probably more than that in the horizontal. Now I'll pan, and I'm just panning a little bit so I can see my UCS icon, see the green vertical line, the red horizontal line, and now I've zoomed out as far as I can in this drawing. And I'm going to start my drawing, but I'm going to paste in that graphic so you can sort of get a guideline for what we're working on here. So this door is rotated at a 45-degree angle. I'm going to draw an extra line like this. I'm going to add an extra line. This line will be 30. Is there a way to write text? I don't want to try and write text with, no, there isn't. I want this horizontal line to be 30. I'm going to try and write text here. at an angle, I'll just do the little AutoCAD angle symbol, which is less than 0 degrees. Ugh. That's awful. So the first angle that we're going to draw at will be 45 degrees from 0, 0. I apologize. This is much better on the whiteboard in the classroom, but you didn't have to drive on the Beltway today, at least not to come here. That's supposed to be a 2. I am killing this 2. Holy crap. The second angle is 315 degrees. All right, third angle, 225 degrees. Fourth, I'm getting carpal tunnel using this thing, 135 degrees. And the fifth is 0. Okay, so let me do this once, and then I'll undo it. We can do this together. I might pass through my little helper image here. Hopefully not. But so the graphic on page 24 shows polar tracking. We're going to use polar tracking instead of ortho. Ortho forces us to draw at horizontals and verticals, or at 90-degree incremental angles. Polar tracking, which is just to the right of ortho, it looks like a circle with 2 lines coming out of it. That allows us to draw at whatever predefined incremental angle we want to. All right, so here, right now I have neither ortho nor polar on, but polar looks like, and here he goes again with this stupid highlighter. I'm going to do it anyway, so I'll go highlighter. Polar looks kind of like a circle with a line coming out at 45 and a line coming out at 0 degrees. I should have used the pen for that. And it's right there, just to the right of ortho. I'm going to left click to turn polar on. Again, blue indicates active status on the status bar. Then I'm going to click the little arrow next to it. So ortho does not have the little arrow, the little disclosure button like polar tracking is. Ortho is on or off. When it's on, it forces you to draw at 0 and 90 degrees, or 0, 90, 180, 270. Polar, when it's on, you can open this menu up and say, yeah, I want to do 90. It's just like ortho, right? 90, 180, 270, 360. Or in the case of our door, which is rotated at 45 degrees, I want to use 45-degree incremental angles. It kind of doubles the number of incremental angles: 45, 90, 135, 180, 225, 315, and then finally 0 or 360. So I'm turning on. I'm going to confirm that this worked. Confirm it goes away when you use this menu. As soon as you click your desired incremental angle, it drops out of sight. So I like to confirm it, and now I'm at 45 degrees. So let me do this once. This door is 30 at its widest. It's 1.75 at its narrowest. And I'm going to use these angles. Hopefully this is going to help. I'll go line. Just like with the window, I'll type in my first point, which is 0, 0, enter. And then I'm going to move my mouse around until I see I mentioned this before as being a laser beam. That's called a tracking vector. I move around, I find my tracking vector, then I'll check my polar tooltip at my crosshairs. The tracking vector only displays when you hit an incremental angle as pre-selected in the polar tracking menu. So once I see the tracking vector, I check the angle to make sure it's what I want. And it is, it's 45 degrees. So I'll type in 30 and I'll press enter. My next angle is 90 degrees of my 45-degree angle. But AutoCAD measures angles counterclockwise, so I have to kind of go all the way around the clock to come back to that what's a 315 degree angle, 315 degrees. When I see my tracking vector, I check my tooltip. My distance is 1.75, enter. So that worked out fine. My next angle, this is one of the easier angles to determine because it is parallel to your first angle. So at a 225 degree angle, your tracking vector should shoot off the screen. You can check your tooltip and see if you've got 225. Don't worry about the distance, but just look for the 225 degrees in your polar tooltip. Your distance is 30, and then enter. And then finally, now I could close this, but I want to do 2 more lines, not 1 more line. So I'm going to point at my UCS icon with my crosshairs, and when I see my tracking vector, again, I'm going to check my polar tracking tooltip. I want a 135 degree angle, 135 degrees. When I see that, I'll type in 1.75. I'll press enter. Now here's the extra line I'm adding is at a 0 degree angle, and it's going to help me place that arc that will indicate the door swing. So I'm putting my crosshairs right on the red horizontal grid line. That's the 0x or 0y, whichever one you want to call it. And my distance is, my phone is ringing. I'm going to just try to turn the ringer off. I'm at a 0 degree angle. My distance is 30. Enter. And then I'll kind of look at my drawing to see how it looks. Am I happy with how this has come out? And I am. I'm happy. I'm going to hit escape. And that's the result. Now, unfortunately, I put this little markup right in my path, but it shouldn't obscure your view that much. So, if you haven't already done this line work, I'm going to restart. I'm going to just erase this, and I'll restart my line command. We can do it together. So again, we started a new drawing, changed the limits to 30 in the horizontal, 30 in the vertical, and then I'm zoomed out. I zoomed out as far as I can go to those new limits. That way I can see the drawing as I draw it. Next, we'll start that line command. Left-click line, and when asked to specify first point, I'm not going to left-click anywhere. I'm going to type 0, 0. You can too. 0, 0, enter. Find your first angle with your crosshairs and polar tracking. Make sure polar tracking is on, and there it is. I found my polar tracking. I also looked at my status bar to make sure my polar tracking was blue. Sometimes it turns off. So in this case, it didn't turn off. I have a 45 degree angle. I type in my first distance of 30, enter. There's the first one. Second angle is 315 degrees. And it's almost like forming a big capital A or a big triangle on screen. I find my 315 degree angle. I type in 1.75. and I press enter. My third angle is 225 degrees. I find that 225 degree angle. I type in 30 and I press enter. All right, fourth angle. The easiest way to find this one is just point at your UCS icon or go a little beyond it, and now I can see my tracking vector. I can see my polar tooltip saying 135 degrees. I'll type in 1.75 and press enter. And finally, my last angle, this is one that I added. It's not in the book, but I think it helps. It's a 0 degree angle. I check the tooltip. I'm on my red horizontal line. There's 0 degrees. Distance is 30. And then finally, enter. Right? And then if I'm happy with what I've drawn, I'll hit escape, and that ends the command. Okay. So let me know if that gave you a hard time or if you need more time to draw that. Cool. All right. So I'm going to erase this graphic that I pasted. I'll just select it and delete it. And the text is still sitting here. I'll get rid of that text. Erase all drawings. So this drawing is not quite done. If I want to make this drawing, like I don't have a good example of it. Like I usually have an example of this drawing, but I don't. But there's a swing, and the swing goes from basically from the top, the highest point of the rectangle, and it comes down, and you can totally freehand this. Most of these commands you can freehand them, but the overarching topic is drawing with precision. And people will sometimes like, dude, why are you just freehanding it when the topic is drawing with precision? So I can't argue with that. So we're going to use the arc tool. I'll open up the drop down for arc. I wish I could pin it. I can't pin it. But the second method from the top is start, center, end. And there's probably more than one way that works, but I find this to be the easiest, start, center, end. And what we'll do is we'll start the start, center, end command for arc, and the start point will be the right end point of this horizontal line. This will be the start. I'm just going to put an S there, not a very good S. Then we're going to need a center of our arc. The center will be the right end point of that same line. So I'll do C, and I'm drawing squares. These are supposed to be your object snap. And then the end is the high point of that rectangle. I'll put an E. Oof, that looks awful. But you get the idea. This isn't really those. I don't think these drawing tools in Go-To training are supposed to be, standalone tools, right? So watch as I do this, and then I'll undo it. We can do it together. So I'll open up where the arc tool is. I'll click Start, Center, End, and I'm going to follow the prompts. The first prompt says Specify Start Point of Arc. So I'll left-click the left end point of that arc. Then the prompt says Specify Center Point of Arc. Let me back that up. I'm left-clicking the right end point of that horizontal line. I may have said left. I click the right end point of the horizontal line. Now I'll come get the left end point of that same horizontal line. That's my center. Left click. Then finally I go to the high point of that rotated rectangle, and I'm going to left click. That's the end point of arc. I'll left click, and that ends the command. And that places that as about as well as it can be placed on this drawing. And then I'll erase the horizontal line. But again, I'm going to erase that and do it again. So opening up where arc is, I'm finding start, center, end. I'll left click on this. The command prompt says to specify start point. I'll left click the right end point of the horizontal line, left click with my object snap. Specify center point of arc. I'll left click the left end point of that same horizontal line. It's a little slow right now. There we go. Left click that's my center of my arc. And then finally I'll come and left click the high point of this rotated rectangle as sort of showing the path or the sweep of that door as it opens. And now I can erase the horizontal line. It has done its job. Maybe it wouldn't hurt to keep it, but the original handout doesn't have that. So I'm going to select that horizontal line and delete that. And there we have it. So that's a very diagrammatic, sort of schematic door in plan view, so someone could look at it and see, oh, that door is hinged on the left. It swings out, from the right, and so forth. And again, once I'm done with this, I'll save it. I'm going to click Save. Make sure I've gone to my AutoCAD 2019 Level 1 folder, and I'll call this drawing Door. And then I'll hit Save. All right. So now I'm going to erase that SCE. All right, and there we have it. So questions at all? Repeats? Questions on anything? Cool. Okay. Awesome. All right. Let me come back to... I'm going to leave that drawing open for now. I mean, when I'm done, I'll just close all these drawings. But let's get to our final topics. Back to the PowerPoint. I just launched a different AutoCAD. There's AutoCAD 2020. Can I just close this right now? I think I did. All right, there we go. So I'm back in my PowerPoint. We've done all the day one, part 3. We used absolute Cartesian coordinate, ortho, and line command to create the window. Used existing objects, we used object snap, and that line that we drew to create, it's still not gone away yet. There we go, I'm going to X out of that, sorry about that. And then we use polar tracking, line command, and so forth to create the door drawing. So let's move on to our last topic. This is basic modify commands. We've got, according to this document, we've got 5 basic modify commands, 4 of which are similar to each other, like move and copy are similar to each other, extend and trim are similar to each other. Erase is kind of the odd man out, where he's not really like anybody else, but you'll get the idea for this. Coming into the class handout, we're going to page 28. And page 28 shows your move, copy, erase command twice on the left side of the page and then once on the right side of the page, or once on the left side of the page, once on the right side of the page. And the reason for that is you can use these commands 2 different ways, really. The method on the left is the user selects the object to be modified, like the line, a circle, or whatever, and then selects the command. In the case of the erase command, once you've selected the erase button, the command is over. In the example of copy and move, or move and copy, the command prompts will walk you through the evolution of that command. So when possible, I like to select the object first, then the command after. If you select the command first and then the object after, there's an unintuitive step of pressing the enter key to move forward in the command, and it doesn't tell you that. You just kind of have to know. So when possible, I'll select the object first. In AutoCAD, I'm going to click Open, and one of the drawings I supplied to you, I hope you have it, it's a drawing called Modify Commands. So if you can find that and open it, that'll be great. So I'm going to pan and zoom. Again, I talked about panning and zooming first session this morning. The zoom command, I'm going to point my crosshairs at my destination and then roll the wheel forward. It might not perfectly center that location. If it doesn't, I can push and hold the mouse wheel and pan down. So now I've got my erase area almost perfectly centered on the in my drawing window. So one thing that's different about AutoCAD from other software, not all other software, but some other software, is if I left click one thing, I've just selected that horizontal line, then I'll select the vertical lines, like I'll select every other vertical line, all with a left click. These are all left clicks. There. All those objects stayed selected. I didn't hold down my shift key or my control key. AutoCAD has this auto-accumulate behavior where if you select one thing, that thing stays selected even if you select other things. And that's by design. AutoCAD, the assumption is you're going to select multiple things all the time. With all my desired objects selected, I'll hit the erase button, or I'll press the erase button on the modify panel. It looks like your Fort Ticonderoga #2 pencil. It's yellow with a red eraser. And if I left click on that, those 5 lines, or however many lines, actually it was 4 lines, my command line tells me erase 4 found. So erase 4 objects. I'll undo that, right? So it was just left click one object, left click the next, missed it, left click the next, left click. And when my desired number of objects are selected, I'll hit the erase button. Okay. That one, you knew how to do that before we met. I guarantee you knew how to erase stuff. Erasing stuff in AutoCAD is no different than erasing stuff in Publisher. Like if I want to erase some of this stuff in Publisher, I'll select it, and I'll hit delete. You know, I can do the same thing in AutoCAD. I can, in AutoCAD, select a line, I'll select a couple lines, and I'll hit the delete key on the keyboard, delete, or the erase button on the modify panel. The result is the same. So that one rarely needs any instruction. You just know how to do it, and it rarely needs any repeats. But I did it earlier also, right? As Daron said, I did do it earlier. So that, not that it was a secret, but the secret's out. So it's that one's pretty easy. The move command is a little bit more involved. So I'm going to use the move command to move this circle to attach its center to the endpoint of one of these lines. Now I can actually do that just by using the grips. If I left click circle, left click the center grip, left click the end of a line, that was the result that I was looking for. Now AutoCAD for some reason doesn't consider that a move. It considers it a stretch, which is a very strange thing. It's a stretch, not a move. But here's what it looks like. I'm only going to add one thing. I'm going to add the move button. It won't look any different. Left click circle, left click move. And it says left click your base point. Like, I don't talk like this, you don't talk like this, but the base point is the center. In this case, I'm going to use the center. Where do you want to start this action? I want to start it at the center. Left click the center, and then specify second point, left click the destination or the end point. So that's move, and you don't really need, for a singular object, you don't really need to use your move button. But once you get into multiple objects, or if you want to move this circle by something other than its center, you kind of have to use the move command. So left click the circle, left click move, left click the center of the circle, left click the midpoint of this middle line, and that's it. This command is not continuous. Right? It kind of makes sense. You're moving something, and when you're done moving it, you're done moving it. Left click circle, left click move, left click center of circle, left click end point of line. All right, so every time I teach this command, I always imply that you have to use your object snaps to move something. That's not the case. I can left click the circle, left click move, left click my base point anywhere in space, and then just, it won't be as accurate, but if I just need to get something out of the way, I can just move it, just moving my mouse. Right? If I need to be accurate, I'll be accurate. Select my circle, select move, hover near the edge, find the center, left click, move to my midpoint, left click. For really short distance moves, I don't need to be accurate. I'll select the circle, hold down the control key, and I'll use the arrow keys on the keyboard. Again, this is me not needing accuracy, because if it's a design element, like for me, if it's a door or a window, I really want to be accurate. For something that like text, I always think of text. If I want to put something in the upper left corner of these practice areas, I can select all three of these text objects, hold down my control key, and I'll just move. The command is actually called nudge. I'm just using my arrow keys to nudge these things to the other side, and I don't really need to be accurate for that. That can be pretty loosey-goosey, if you will. But for accuracy, select the object, select the move button, select your base point using your object snap, select your second point using your object snap, and there you have it. Okay. So next, unless there's any questions, I'm going to use the copy command. And I don't even mind moving into copy this soon. Like, some of these commands can take longer to learn. Move and copy are exactly the same. The workflow is the same. You just have more stuff left over when you copy. So here's how copy works. I'll left click the circle, left click copy, move the mouse into the drawing window so I get that prompt, specify base point. So I'll left click the center of the circle, left click, and now it's specify second point. So the only difference between move and copy is I can specify multiple second points or multiple destinations. This is one of the, I think this is the second continuous command we've dealt with. This is copy, and if I'm done copying, I can just hit escape to cancel, to stop that command. But I have a hard time doing that am. Not that it's hard, I kind of get in a zone and I'm just popping these circles all over the place. And again, I'm doing that thing where I'm snapping to endpoints, I'm snapping to midpoints with my object snap. Don't let me make you think you have to snap your copied object to something. You can just, populate outside. Maybe you're doing, some landscape design. You want to throw some bushes around. You want to make them look natural. You can just whatever. But when you're done, hit escape to cancel. And this whole time I had ortho off. Polar was on. Polar is much freer than ortho. It lets you move at any angle. Ortho is going to force you to draw at right angles. All right, so if I left click a circle, left click copy, I need to left click a base point, and I can left click my multiple second points, multiple destinations. When I'm done, I'll hit escape. Escape. Okay, good. Thank you, Terrence. That's great. Yeah, some of this stuff is not tough. Some of it's not terribly intuitive, but once you see the pattern, it becomes pretty easy, pretty straightforward. All right, let's do. We'll move on to extend and trim. So I'll use extend and trim pretty heavily when we get into this bedroom exercise. We'll be trimming lines to make window openings, trimming lines to make door openings, trimming lines to shorten walls and so forth to desired lengths. So trimming, and to some extent we'll use extend. We'll use extend, we'll use a command called offset to offset this horizontal line down the screen 15 feet 6. Well, that horizontal line is too short to touch the inside vertical line, so we'll extend it. So these two commands sort of work hand in glove in our drawing exercise, and here's what it looks like. I'll start with extend. Between these two commands, trim sits on top of this. They're in a fly out button. So here's where trim is, just left of erase, and if I hit the down arrow where erase is, that disclosure button, that opens up, it exposes the extend tool. So I'll left click extend. The command prompt says at my crosshairs are no longer a crosshair, now it's a square. That's called a pick box. A pick box. If I double click on this text, I can edit it to say, I'll just type in PICKBOX, pick box. Some commands want you to pick objects or select them. If I go extend, I no longer have crosshairs, I have a pick box. The command prompt on the command line says select boundary edges. So it wants me to select my destinations. If I'm extending this horizontal line and the destination is this vertical line, it wants me to select the vertical line first. Or if I'm extending this vertical line to contact this bottom horizontal line down here, the bottom horizontal line is the boundary or the destination. So it wants me to select boundaries and then hit enter to move forward. But on the command line, you can see this, it says select objects or select all in brackets. So if I hit enter, I just told AutoCAD everything's a boundary, everything's a destination. If I have a boundary and I hover over a line, I'll get a preview. If I'm left of the midpoint, I preview left. If I'm right of the midpoint, I preview right. And I'll just left click to confirm it. Hover above the midline, I like the preview, left click. Hover, left click. Hover, left click. I'll just extend all these lines out to contact really the outermost boundary of the trim, extend, or extend trim area. I'll extend this line in the offset area. Right? I'm just extending to the nearest boundary. I'll extend this line to the top edge of the circle, same line, bottom edge of a different circle. So just extending to the nearest boundary edge. right? I'm going to hit escape and I'll undo that. Escape, undo. So it's extend, enter. Or you could right click. I could right click in place of enter. Once I've hit enter, everything is a boundary. As long as one line points at another line, then I can use the line being pointed at as a boundary and extend the line doing the pointing. And when I'm done, I'll hit escape to cancel. All right, so extend wants us to choose boundaries to extend to, and if we just hit enter, we're telling AutoCAD everything in this drawing is a boundary. You don't need to extend to everything, but it's more efficient than selecting 2 or 3 or 6 individual boundaries and then hitting enter anyways. If you're going to hit enter, you got to hit enter anyways in this command. Just start the command, hit enter. The only time I wouldn't do that, like when would I not do? I'm going to undo. I'll undo that much. All right, I want to extend this horizontal line to contact the vertical line that's the extreme left boundary of this practice area. Well, I don't want to go through these 10 or however many lines there are. I'll extend, left click this vertical line, press enter, left click that horizontal line. It went through all those, it ignored all those other boundaries, and that's kind of what I want. I don't want to have to deal with that much. Those many. I want to click 8 times or 10 times to extend my line. I'll hit escape. But for the most part, if I'm working in close contact, if you will, in an enclosed area more or less, extend, enter or right click, and then just hover and left click, hover, get a preview, like the preview, accept the preview, like so. Hover, preview, like it, click it. Hover, preview, like it, click it. I mean, you won't always like it. You don't have to click it, but I'm just kind of refining the look of my drawing. In AutoCAD, a lot of the work that we do in regular plain old AutoCAD is taking these modify commands and using them on existing objects to refine the appearance of it, to shape it, to make these primitives look like something that is recognizable. A window opening, a door opening, a window, a door, a gate, a manhole cover, what have you. Okay. Questions on extend or trim? Yeah, right. So Terrence, right, because you want them to be approved, like the drawing, you want your drawing to be approved? Yeah, that's the best. A lot of the work that I did when I worked for an engineering firm, I sort of left the engineering industry as, hopefully you can see I don't know if you guys can see the webcam, I think you can, air quotes, a designer. But I'm not a designer. I mean, I'm an AutoCAD guy, and I was happy to be an AutoCAD guy. I would get markups from the engineers. I worked for a couple engineers specifically. An engineer would mark up a drawing because it was not going to be approved. It didn't get approval. It got marked up. Fix this, fix that, and I'd take the drawing and I would make changes to the drawing based on the markup. Hand the drawing back to the engineer. And usually I'd print out the new drawing with the old drawing stapled to it, and the markups were highlighted like you see on my screen, this highlight. And the highlight is supposed to help me keep organized and tell my engineer, oh, yeah, I did that thing. I took care of that thing you directed me to do. And I wanted that approval. I mean, that was what let me go home. If I didn't get approved, I was probably going to stay late that night to get those drawings done, so they could be delivered tomorrow. So yeah, so you start off with a real basic shape. We started off with a basic rectangle, added an arc, and it was air quotes a door. We started with a line and added 5 more lines. We've got a window. But we're kind of agreeing Hey, let's pretend this is a window. Let's pretend this is a door, where there's kind of an agreement, because these things are just lines and arcs. So extend and trim, they're so similar. They're camped out in the same drop-down button. I've used my extend command. Now I'll use my trim command. Open up where extend is. I'll click trim, press enter, and now if I hover over a line I want to trim it, the preview now is not an extension to a boundary. It's being trimmed back to a boundary. I hover and I left click. I trim back to my nearest boundary. Hover, left click. Hover, left click. So the preview now is that line fades out. There's a little red X at my crosshairs. The catch-all term for that little red X is a badge. There's a badge at my crosshairs. The badge is different based on whatever command you're in. In some commands you won't see them, but the badge is a visual cue. If I hover over this circle, my badge is now the don't do it symbol, the universal circle with a line through it. Don't do it or can't do it. I can't trim that circle because I've only got one cutting edge. If you think about the physics, if you can call it physics, if I trim off of one line, this whole circle has to disappear because it's on both sides of that line. If I have a line that passes through, say, the 9 o'clock quadrant and the 12 o'clock quadrant, I can trim half of that circle or a portion of that circle off. But with a singular cutting edge, I can't trim a circle. So I need two cutting edges. It's one line, but it passes on two edges. So I'll trim the circles I can. I'll trim the lines off the inside of the circles and that kind of thing. And this is the product, or the result. This is the result of me starting the command, trim, pressing enter, telling AutoCAD everything's a cutting edge. Right? So I can just start to refine my drawing to make it look more detailed, more refined. All right, so AutoCAD, it's not designed for any one special function. It's designed for design. So we have to sort of whittle these things into shape and present our design with the choices we've made. I want to use the line command. I want to use the extend command, so forth. If I start trim again, I'll go trim, enter. I can trim this line off of this circle. If I hold my shift key, it even says it right there in my tooltip. Shift select object to trim or shift select to extend. If I hold my shift key and left click that line, I'm extending to the nearest boundary. So these commands are so similar, you can just use the shift key to make trim, extend, make extend, trim. Now that little command line option, or what are you going to call it, that won't save you hours of time. It'll save you seconds of time. And if you don't remember this, it's not a big deal. It's really negligible. It's right there in the command prompt, but it is forgettable. I'll hit escape. Extend and trim. I'll go one more trim. Trim, enter. I'll just trim off these lines above these circles. Done. Escape. Escape to cancel. Okay. Questions at all on those 5, right? Erase, move, copy, extend, trim. Those 5 basic modify commands. Okay. All right then, let's move forward. One final topic for today. Back to the PowerPoint. Methods of selection. So there are a number of different ways we can select individual or multiple objects. The default method of selection we've been using so far is this single left click. The single left click is actually referred to as top pick. Top pick. If you ever take online testing or take certification testing because you want to be a certified AutoCAD professional, the the definition of top pick will be part of the test. And what that means is if I take this circle and I'll copy this circle by its center point to another circle's center point, there's several circles in this location where there's only one circle in that location. You can kind of see those circles on the right are thicker, indicating there's more than one circle there. Well, if I single left click that circle and move it away, which circle did I get? I got the top one. AutoCAD has a draw order. It's at work all the time. And if I select something and there's things on top of each other, I'm getting the top thing, top pick. You will only need to know that if you do certification testing, and it's a really small percentage of the people who do that, because AutoCAD is usually not your only role. You'll have multiple roles, and AutoCAD is one of them. So if you're only an AutoCAD person, like I was only an AutoCAD person, certification is beneficial to help secure employment and get your foot in the door. I know when I was in production and I was kind of the CAD manager, though that wasn't the title, I would hire other AutoCAD people, and they'd come to interview and like, hey, I know AutoCAD. And I'm like, all right, come work for us. Well, they didn't. They didn't really know AutoCAD, not to the level that we needed them to. And so the certification testing is just takes one thing out of the employer's way, and it helps the employee. It lets them know that, or it makes them, and it's this portable certification that help get them hired at other places. Anyways, moving on. We've talked about extend and trim. Top pick is one method of selection. Then over on page 28, we have a couple other methods of selection. And this is a list that used to be a lot longer. I think it was 7 or 8 methods long. And at the end of the day, you've listened to me talk for now damn near 6 hours, and it's just, I shortened it because I could see like the eyes closing, the hope fading from the eyes and stuff like that. Other methods of selection. One is a selection window. Make a selection box from left to right with your crosshairs. Every entity entirely enclosed in that box will be selected. So let me do that. I want to capture all the circles in the erase area, but on this top row, but none of the lines. Let's say I get the top 2 rows. So I come left and above my objects. I left click and release, and I move from left to right, and I'm making a box, a window, left click. That window captured all 2, 4, 6, 12 of those circles, but none of the lines. If I hit erase, the circles go away, but the lines are not touched because the lines are partially outside of my selection window. The selection window, needs to completely enclose whatever it is it will be selecting. If anything is partially outside of that window, it does not get selected. Left click left of your objects and move from left to right. Boom. So if I want all those circles and all those lines, I got to make a selection window large enough to enclose all of those circles and lines. Left click. Erase. Undo. Selection window has a visual cue, solid boundary, blue border. Nope. Solid boundary, blue tint, not border, but the interior, the blue tint is a visual cue. That's your selection window. The reverse of that is the crossing window. The reverse of selection window is crossing window. Make a selection box from right to left with your crosshairs. Every entity entirely enclosed or simply touched by that box's edge will be selected. Right? This one's a little bit more aggressive, right? I'll left click, I'm right, and it doesn't matter if I'm above or below. Actually, the selection window doesn't matter if you're above or below. Just you need to be, larger than the objects to be selected. With crossing window, I left click and I move from left to right, and I'm not even, I don't have the top circles completely enclosed, the bottom circles are not completely enclosed. The lines, none of the lines are completely surrounded. Left click, even still, I got everything. I got all that stuff because the crossing window captures anything it touches or totally encloses. Crossing window. I left click and release right of my objects, move towards the left, left click, boom, I got all those objects deleted. It's very aggressive. Can be aware of that. Lasso. Fourth method, if you count top pick as the first, lasso is the fourth method. It's exactly the same thing as creating the selection window or the crossing window, but with selection and crossing, I'm clicking and then releasing the left mouse button. With lasso, I'm clicking and holding the left mouse button. So back in my drawing, if I click and hold and move from left to right, I'm making the selection lasso that has this sort of amorphous shape. Some people call it a blob. And the lasso just needs to totally, the selection lasso needs to totally enclose the objects it's selecting, because if anything's partially outside that selection, it's not selected. Oh, I got that one. I was trying to come in just short of it. Click and hold, move from right to left, like so. So I just got the top row. Click and hold, left to right. Now, the reverse of that is click and hold and move from right to left. This is the crossing lasso. And again, it's much more aggressive. Anything it totally encloses or simply touches is selected. So I want to get all those lines, boom. Very destructive. But aggressive, because sometimes you just need to get hold, like, look, this is a mess. In the top pick area now, I need to get rid of this stuff. I'll just use my crossing lasso. I get everything selected. Once I hit erase, everything's gone, like so. So I've just cleaned up that drawing. And we're back. Okay. And we'll use these interchangeably, of course. Select all. I haven't really done this yet, but when I get into tomorrow, when we start working on our bedroom drawing, the bedroom drawing currently has a lot of line work. This is just some doodles, some nonsense that I don't need to keep. I'll use my select all to get rid of everything. Control A is select all. I'm not going to delete everything now, but in this drawing, if I do a Control A, that is select all. And then I can hit erase, and now I've got a nice clean drawing, and I can start a new project or whatever. Control Z, I'll undo that. But Control A is select all. And you probably knew that. That's just regular Windows shortcut or keyboard shortcuts. But there is a select all button on the utilities panel. One of the small buttons on the right side of the panel, there's a green tint to it. That is select all. If I click select all, there we go. I must have missed it the first time. Click select all, everything gets selected. On the command line it says AI _ cell all. It's something like AutoCAD interface select all. It's a lot of times these command line prompts, the command line information that follows the pressing of one of these buttons might look like nonsense, but it really is just it's AutoCAD's shorthand for the macro that issues that command or that what have you. So select all captures everything, and I can delete everything or copy it and put it in a different drawing or whatever. I'll hit escape to deselect. Escape is cancel in AutoCAD. It's also deselect. If you have things selected and you don't want them to be selected, you can hit escape, and that will deselect those objects. All right, almost done. Selection preview. If you're using AutoCAD, a newer AutoCAD, this behavior is activated by default. It's just already on. If I hover over the word top pick, those letters react to the presence of my crosshair. Or if I hover over this horizontal line, that line will react to the presence of my crosshairs. So what it wants you to do is wait for the reaction. My text reacts, left click. Text reacts, left click. Circle reacts, left click. If I don't get a reaction, I'm probably not able to select that object. It could be on a locked layer, or it could be who knows what. But that selection preview is supposed to be a visual aid to make our jobs easier. Lets us know we're currently not over the desired object for selection. Now we are over the selected, the desired object of selection, and so forth. I'll hit escape on that. Select similar is the final method of selection. This is my favorite one. I definitely get a chance to use this one every day. It just makes it's almost so intuitive, but it's kind of hidden. So I want to get all these circles, right? I'll left click one circle, left click, and then I'll right click my mouse, right click. So I mentioned right clicks earlier today. Right clicks are sort of context sensitive. If you have something selected, you might get a right click menu that is native to what, the actions you can take with that object. So below midpoint is a select similar option. I'll click select similar, and if you can see my screen, every circle was selected. Any circle that was trimmed was not. Once you trim a circle, it's no longer a circle, it's now an arc. All these circles are on the same layer. So the way select similar works is it looks for the name of the object, in this case circle. All right, I select similar, and all these circles are on the same layer, layer 0. If any one of these circles were on a different layer, I would have to find a different way to select it. Or if one of these circles, well, let me just show you. I'll select 3 of these circles, move them to the dimension layer. So these 3 circles are yellow, the rest are white. I'm going to change the radius of 2 circles, right? Some arbitrary radius, I don't even care, right? They're just different sizes. Now, left click one of the white circles, right click, select similar, right? None of the 3 yellow circles were selected. Both the circles that were resized are selected. Doesn't matter what size they are, it just matters that they're circles. Or the white lines, left click one white line, right click, select similar. Any line that's white. Now these squares are different, they're not lines, they're polylines. So that captured all the white lines, all the lines on layer 0. So when we get into it, like when you start placing text in your drawing, you may need to change the size of your text to make it bigger or smaller to accommodate a change of scale. Left click one piece of text, right click, select similar. With that text selected, I can now open up a property palette and change the height of that text. Okay, so that's the select similar method of selection. It won't kill you if you forget all of these. The top 2, however, selection window, crossing window, I mean, for the longest time, that's all you had, really. I mean, you had, those are the overt ones. You had the top pick, single left click, selection window, make a window from left to right, crossing window, make a window from right to left. There were a couple other obscure ones, but these were enough to get you through, a lot of your AutoCAD work. Okay. Questions on any of that? That's our last topic for today. Questions at all? Nice, Terrence. Terrence, you're easy. I want you to be in all my classes. How about you, Matt? Matt, are you still there? Oh, who asked for less? Oh, that's funny. I don't know. That is so funny. You would say that. Somebody had to have. All these little features are, except for the baseline stuff, someone said, hey, can you do this? Can you add that? And since 2007, Autodesk has been taking suggestions from the using public and said, hey, can you give us this? Can you give us that? Well, someone said, can I have the lasso? And they probably were a Photoshop user or something like that. I think that that particular capability was in Photoshop. I've never used Photoshop, but I've heard a couple of my students say that, oh, that's Photoshop, inspired. So you're right, it's funny. Yeah, it's funny you say that. All right, let me do this. If there's no more questions, I'm going to send out the afternoon test. Again, it's just a quick couple questions, and I try to be cognizant to hit these points as we're going along. So I'll open up where it says, where are you, poll, and I'll open up, we're going to do AutoCAD Level 1 Introduction Day 1 Afternoon, and here comes, I'm going to launch the test right now. There it goes. Boom. And close the test. That was probably a new land speed record, 38 seconds. But again, the test isn't about, it shouldn't be unpassable. I know I've definitely seen tests that were unpassable. Autodesk used to have certification testing, and one of our smartest guys here, he could barely pass it, and it was how it was written. Now I do happen to be acquainted with the person who wrote these questions. And really, they're. I hate. Was it tricky? Which one was tricky? Okay, it wasn't. Yeah, and it shouldn't be, right? This isn't a test of your knowledge. This is a test of my ability to communicate. So if I'm saying stuff, and it's like, what the heck did he just say? And when it comes time for you to, yeah, I think it should be pretty straightforward. So cool. All right. That concludes today's instruction. Questions on anything? Questions on stuff we've covered? Questions on stuff we haven't covered? Questions at all? Nice. So, Matthew, I didn't get a chance to ask you. Do you have any? Have you been using AutoCAD already, or is this brand new? Okay. So Terrence, I'm looking forward to tomorrow too. When you're ready, you can sign off or whatever you want, and I'll stop the video and I'll have them uploaded by tomorrow morning. I'll upload them tomorrow morning. Okay, there you go. So Matthew, you're right. I mean, I've not used Photoshop. Good night, Terrence. But there's got to be only so many ways you can do this stuff. Like draw a line or whatever. I know that people who've used other software, graphic-based software, and I'm going to be specific to like MicroStation, VectorWorks, stuff like that. They have no problem whatsoever picking up AutoCAD because they've been there, done that. It's just similar stuff. So awesome. Questions on any of today's content, Matt? I think you kind of did indicate it seemed pretty straightforward. All right, I'm going to upload the PowerPoint. So tomorrow when you log in, the PowerPoint will be there, and I'll add a few more just helper like cheat sheets and that kind of thing, and just to hopefully make this an easier process for you, or an easy process for you. So awesome. Thanks very much. I'll talk at you tomorrow. Have a good night. Thanks. And that concludes day one. Let me click